Hello and welcome. I am Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. This is the feather duster tale of the cat Isadora, who apparently is going to be gracing us with her presence at least a little bit today. I hope you are doing well on this Saturday in July. As you can tell by the rather frazzled state of my hair, it is humid. Let me know in the comments section how you all are surviving the summer's heat, or whether or not you're getting a break, or what else is happening, because it's been a real roller coaster with the weather this year. But on the notice of chats and responding and talking back and forth, I am now using, in addition to StreamYard showing me the comments on YouTube, I am using my tablet to show me the comments on Rumble, hoping that I get a little bit more of a real-time response for people so that our conversations can actually be conversational. Now, let's get down to some of the housekeeping. Let's see. Okay. There we go. So, we have a couple of announcements. As always, I want to highlight what other members of Blackbird's Brew have been doing this week. The American Folklore and Paranormal podcast, he gave us Ghost of George Washington and how he saved the Union earlier this week. It was the season finale, and he will, of course, be back with us come spooky season, but he left us a really good one. I had no idea about this story before he mentioned it, and it was a really good watch. So if you have not already checked that out, you really should. Next, Druid Foxx of the Druid's Den, she gave us two things this week. First, a book review, Wicca, Book of Shadows by Lisa Chamberlain, and also an invitation to celebrate summer 2023 if you happen to be in her neck of the woods up north. And of course, for all of our fine people, we have links to their most recent offerings in the description box below. And then Raven Wulfgar, he gave us the weekly reading, and he had the theme of value yourself. And it also, he has been talking for the past several weeks about avoiding overcorrecting. And that's something that he touched upon in the live stream he did with me last Tuesday. Well, Tuesday before last, rather. And this is something, whenever I hear people talk about these themes that have been coming up in their readings or in their spiritual lives or in conversation over and over again, and I start to pay a little extra attention to it. I feel like, yeah, there's a reason why this is being brought up, and why this is being brought up to a broader circle of pagans. So check out what he had to say, see if it resonates with you. And of course, leave him a like, leave him a comment. It's always good to encourage pagan content creators, because unless someone tells us how we're doing, or whether or not something we've said makes sense to someone or doesn't make any sense at all, we don't know. We can always guess. So never underestimate the value of what you have to say. And then, of course, we have Liberty Wiccan this week to give us a for Vue. That's when she and Puritan Vue will sit down and have some conversations about current events, politics, shared values, where pagans and Christians really come together. These are incredibly important conversations, and it sets such a good example for everyone else in the country, while everyone is so busy trying to tear each other apart and let everything just go into a complete shambles. There are some voices out there who are saying, you know what, we actually do have common ground, and maybe that's the thing we should focus upon. And that's what those conversations are about. Season 2 is coming soon, so be on the lookout. Next up, Blackbird's Brew Gilded Group Chats. Our next one will be Wednesday, July 12th, 2023. The times are in our nice little slide there. I've done one for each time zone, so if you don't know what time zone you're in, you can find that out very easily. Just Google it. And the topic we're going to be discussing is the question of whether or not pagan spirituality wanes in summer, or if it takes on a different character, things of that nature. Are we feeling differently? Are we practicing differently after the solstice? This was suggested by Puritan Vue, and as I understand it, not only is she going to be there with her boots on for that conversation, but she's also, going to be bringing, ideas and things that have occurred to her, questions that have occurred to her. And so it's really sometimes very helpful to have someone who isn't pagan into these conversations, because, when we are immersed in our own practices, we don't always we don't always think about things that occurs to people to ask from the outside. So I'm very curious about what she'll come up with and how that'll spark thought and further discussion. I think it's really going to be a good one. So if you want to attend, again, date and time is up there as well as the location. It is the Banquet Hall channel. It's under the pub category at Blackbird's Brew. And of course, if you have not already joined Blackbird's Brew and you want to attend and participate, link in the description box. Let's see. And then another group chat for the American Paganism and Witchcraft Project. This will be for the month of August. Now, ordinarily, we would have it on the first Monday of the month, but the first Monday of August is my birthday. I am absolutely taking that day and the evening off. My husband usually takes me out to dinner and does something fun. Don't know what he's got planned this year, but I am not going to be missing it. So we're just going to be having the chat on Tuesday, August 8th, 2023. Again, times in our nice little slide there. And we have a couple of topics. And when I had the first group chat this Monday, I actually asked the attendees, what do you want to cover the next time we talk about this? Where would you like this conversation to go? Because it is all about bringing other people to the table and having them look at things from their perspective and bringing up ideas that may or may not necessarily occur to me. So what we've got going on to begin with is the idea of good guidance. Where can we find it? How can we provide it? That was suggested by Gandalf Freyson. You might be familiar with him. He is the editor, the co-editor really, of the True North Eurofaith newsletter. And of course, he has his own member spotlight channel at Blackbird's Brew. And then the next topic was suggested by Astarte138 as about core pagan values. This is a topic I'm very interested to delve into, and because we've just started, dipping a toe into those waters at the project on the server. It's something that I've been bringing up on these live streams because we are looking for those commonalities between pagans who work with different gods, who have slightly different philosophies. Just where are the places that we actually do come together? Because that's actually what will make this project a success. And what more importantly, it is what will help American pagans be more successful as we establish our own identity as pagans. What do we have in common? That's going to be a good one. The next topic is also suggested by Astarte. How can we be living ambassadors for paganism? Because like it or not, once people know that we are pagan, they're going to base a lot of their ideas upon our conduct and how we present ourselves, the manner in which we choose to communicate. And so being a good representative of our faith, being someone who actually demonstrates, hopefully good behaviors, that's an important thing for us to think about. And the next topic is when to debate non-pagans and when to walk away, also was suggested by Astarte. This is very important because I've been thinking a lot about the differences between debate and discussions and conversations. And with debates, especially when we see it happening on the political realm, the cultural realm, even to an extent on the religious realm, they never really seem to get anywhere in these debates, do they? Everyone's, cheering for the person who most represents, the team they feel themselves to be on, but they're not very productive exchanges. And what I've noticed is that as, things go through these debates that people have, it's essentially just two or more people reiterating their original position. They're not really addressing counterpoints that are brought up by the opposition. They're not explaining about why, yes, I've considered that, but here are the reasons why I don't think that's as much of an issue, or why I think that's a more manageable issue, that my position is actually a better one. That you don't really see that. It's just people, repeating themselves and then, talking over each other. And I'm just, why are we doing this isn't the comparing and contrasting of views. It's just people yelling at each other, whereas when you have discussions, people seem to be much more willing to get underneath the surface of an idea, actually have an exchange. And even though you will discover differences along the way, it isn't necessarily the differences that are of the greatest significance. It is more so about, do we have a common reality that we're operating from? Because if you have someone coming to a conversation and the first thing they say is sky's orange, it's orange all the time, and that's the only color it ever is. And you're like, I'm looking out my window. It's a nice sunny day. Sky's blue. If they can't even agree with something that is objectively observable, then there's really nowhere for a conversation to go. So applying this when we have discussions or when we're exposed to non-pagans, I think this is a good thing for us to really get into. And of course, this particular chat will happen in the channel of group chats for the project. It's under the American Paganism and Witchcraft Project category. So come on over to Blackbird's Brew and be a part of that next month. So I have been spending this past week, this holiday week, where time and everything else goes a little bit jumbled. I've been doing a lot of planning. I've been getting a lot of things for this year done, taken care of, gotten out of the way, particularly when it comes to the daily posts. If you're part of Blackbird's Brew, you know that every morning without fail, I'm posting, a good morning greeting. There's going to be a post that has something to do with the season, as well as, what signs the planets happen to be in, a tarot card of the day, a devotional that I've been taking from Every Day, A Year and a Day of Everyday Witchcraft by Deborah Blake, and also something to do with a correspondence that relates to a theme that I just happened to choose for the month. Always bring that. And the reason why I do that is because I think having these little tidbits, it's a good thing to have as part of your path. It's a good idea to know, what the planetary energies are. So, when you're examining what's going on, and the broader picture or in your own personal life, okay, these are the energies that are essentially our energetic weather conditions. And that's just something that I'm going to be dealing with. So, armed with that knowledge, I can plan accordingly. It's a good idea to do that. And it's the same thing with a tarot card of the day. It may not necessarily portend anything for you specifically, but it may be an idea that's worth contemplating. It can be a focus of meditation for you. And with the devotionals, whether you think the devotional is good or it's like so, and the more I go through Deborah Blake's book, the more I'm like, this is probably the last year I'm really going to be consulting her for much of anything, for a variety of reasons. But just by thinking about it, why, what is your response to this idea for a devotional? What does it inspire you to, like, oh, that's a really great idea and I want to implement that in some fashion? Or do you think, yeah, not really, that kind of misses the mark, but that led me to another idea, and so I'm going to put that into practice. Either way, you can derive some benefit from it. And of course, just, the little reminders about the magical correspondences and tidbits and how they relate to an overall theme. This is just a good way to keep things fresh in your memory. So that's why I do it. But I want to change it a little bit in 2024. Instead of having all of these individual posts and individual channels, what I would like to do is create short videos that essentially cover the same material, but are about a minute and a half long. That way people can watch it. I can upload it directly to the server and other places I post. It can be there. People can, look at it or not as they choose. But it's something that I can get done maybe a little bit more efficiently and doesn't take as much time in preparation. And a lot of time is really spent with preparation. I mean, look at this. This is my big book of everything. And I've been getting things organized. Different ideas and subjects and projects have their own tabs. There's lots of stuff going on. The good thing is that my chaos of production is contained, but it's a lot of stuff. And so streamlining that process, having it to where it can make things good instead of making things hectic, all for the good. Oh, and Rumble, I see American Folklore and Paranormal Podcast. Boo, back to you, sir. Thank you for being here. Glad you're here. And going on with changes in 24, instead of having 5 days a week of essentially pre-canned videos the way I do now, I want to reduce that amount. I'm going to be carrying on with the Havamal series, which will take us through 2025, because a verse at a time, one verse a week, that's plenty to meditate on. That will take us to 2025. And then the Wicca 303 classes, those are going to be continuing on Fridays, and they'll be pre-recorded and all that good stuff. The Wicca teaching classes that I began a couple years ago, it was always meant to be a 3-year project. The first year was, just getting people acquainted with some of the basic concepts and the how-tos. This year, we've really been in an exploration of different things that are associated with witches and the practice of witchcraft, giving people a sense of, this is all part of our identity as practitioners. This is our heritage that we really share. And then next year, it's going to be much more so about living the craft. And that Wicca 303, it's going to be starting in September 2023. It will run through August of 2024. And then that series will be completed. And it's important for me to finish that up and essentially get that crossed off the to-do list. Now, my other series, when it has to do with Norse studies or just pagan studies in general, or about the application of pagan principles to modern day problems, living out Pagan Life or Magical Life with the Pagan Housewife series. These are all things that I think are still very much important, and I still want to be covering these topics, but I want to do so in a way that gives me more flexibility, that I can do much more organically. And that's why I really am going to be doing many more live streams coming up in 24. For one thing, the live streams, they're more popular, they're always better attended, and people are much more inclined to be engaged. I'm always looking for that. How can I get people to actually start talking with one another, not at each other, but actually with each other and having exchanges? And the live streams thus far have been a way that's a little bit more likely for that to happen. People tend to, have something to say in a live stream, and they're less likely to say something on a pre-canned video. So that is what I'm very much going to be doing, and I'll keep you updated on other ideas I want to try out in the coming year. But yeah, I mean, it may be July, but I am absolutely getting prepared and thinking about next year. With all the daily posts, I've got those completely done through October. I'll be starting on November later on today. And, once that's out of the way, it's done, and I can just kind of put it up as an automatic process. And that allows me much more time to work on projects that I'm dealing with in the here and now, as well as planning for next year. So, next thing on the docket, I put up a poll this week, poll number 19, and it has to do with what we should really be calling male practitioners. We know, most of us who have studied for any length of time, we're well aware that the old root word for witch, it had both a masculine and a feminine form. We also know, as a matter of practical experience, that if someone says witch, the assumption is in the feminine all the time. I will die on this hill. Fight me if you want to. But here's the problem. The practice of witchcraft, or magical practice in spiritual context, that is not just the province of women. I mean, at one time it was much more dominated. We're still dominating it now. However, we have male practitioners, and they are knowledgeable. They have a great deal of wisdom and experience, and they have a tremendous amount of power. And I would also like to point out that the push to make witch a unisex term, that is very much a product of the modern day. That is something that has been pushed by feminist practitioners, many of whom who had a deep-rooted hatred towards men. And I do not think that so many people would have been browbeaten into accepting witch as, this so-called unisex term if they had not been beaten into it. If they had not been essentially bullied into accepting this for themselves. So I don't think our brothers deserve that. I think they deserve their own term, their own dignity, because they are bringing something different to the table when it comes to magical workings, whether they're working on their own or whether they are coming together in a circle with other people. Even when we've had some of our brothers attend to group rituals at Blackbird's Brew for various occasions, their very presence, even their presence in group chats, it is bringing in a different atmosphere. And I don't care what anyone says, our species is not unisex. We are not completely interchangeable. Men and women have their own unique qualities, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there certainly is nothing wrong with having terms in the craft that are specific to practitioners. Now, during the survey, there were a couple people who suggested some terms that were essentially gender neutral, unisex. And the reason why I said I was going against that is because, again, there would not be this push for unisex terms if we did not have that strong feminist and, quite frankly, Marxist influence. And hello to Ray. Rose, she made it. I am glad to have you here, dear. Welcome to the live stream. So glad you're here. So glad you're here. So I suggested a couple of alternatives for our male practitioners that actually denoted that they were male. And so there wouldn't have to be this explanation, but I'm actually a dude, because that always has to be specified. Even when you see the memes of male witches exist, I'm like, yeah, but you wouldn't have to specify male if witch wasn't automatically assumed in the feminine. Just saying. So I suggested the term wizard. I also suggested warlock, and I suggested witcher. And I said, which of these terms resonate? And of course, and the other thing that I said is that, I'm not looking to get into a linguistic debate of what word has what origins and this and that, because all of those arguments are really beside the point. The question on the table is, what word term communicates that a practitioner is male? not the other origins. And there's plenty of words that used to have, terrible connotations or very nasty origins that have been reclaimed and repurposed. And now in our modern context, they mean something completely different. Let's see. And Ro is saying that she likes wizard, but that may be because she grew up with Harry Potter. And and that's the thing. I mean, no matter what term we use for our menfolk, there's going to be a counter argument against it, like, oh, that's so Harry Potter, or oh, Warlock. Do you know what that used to mean? And in Witcher, oh, that's so Hollywood. Blah 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 blah. I mean, we can get into all of that, but so what? So what if we're accused of being fantasists for embracing particular terms? Because no matter what term we use, we're going to be accused of that. Which is a term that's accused of, oh, that person's just crazy, or they're a fantasist, or all this and that. So if we're going to find ourselves in this tedious position of having to explain ourselves and justify ourselves no matter what, then we might as well do what suits us. And overwhelmingly, the results of the poll was that, people did tend to prefer wizard. I think it has the least rancor attached to it. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, no matter what the term is, as long as the term is denoting that the practitioner is male, I think that is a huge step forward. I think it helps restore the dignity of our brothers who practice magic. And I think it also conveys power. Because think of those words, wizard, warlock, witcher. These are terms that give images in people's minds. And what matters is not so much where did a word come from, but how do we use it today? And like it or not, in our cultural context, all of those words means a man who has some magical capabilities. And we are operating within the context of our culture, not in the culture's long past. So I think we need to maybe have some mass attitude adjustment about these various terms. And of course, brothers, you deserve your own word. You really do. So let's have this be an ongoing discussion, and let's see where this takes us. Now, next thing on the docket. This story really irritated me. The fake fireworks issue. And I heard this mentioned, after Independence Day, about people talking about, oh, maybe we should have, laser light shows, or maybe we should use drones, or maybe we should do anything other than what is actually traditional for us. And so I was looking up some articles on this, and I found this one, and it's as irritating as you might imagine. Let's see. But before we move on completely, I saw Ro had something to say. She said Merlin was a wizard, and Merlin, as I know him, is badass. Absolutely. He's a very strong archetype. And I think that's something that our brothers they should have those strong archetypes. They should have archetypes that reflect their identity as men. And that's why I'm really making a big push for us, and why it's a hill I'm definitely willing to die on. But back to these fireworks. This article was written by someone called Deborah Levine from it's the Chattanooga Times Free Press. And she said, she begins with, the 4th of July fireworks were wonderful. Notice not the Independence Day fireworks, but the 4th of July fireworks. I'm really starting to get a bee in my bonnet about people who are using that term, because it obscures the meaning about what it is we're actually celebrating. But she goes on, we drove around the neighborhood, check out what's happening, watching the sky explode. It wasn't so wonderful. And then, of course, we were sad for everyone living near Canada, where smoke from horrendous wildflowers there forced some cities to cancel their July 4th fireworks shows. It is natural to feel sympathy for people in that situation. No one wishes, that kind of toxin in the air on anybody. And of course, it is horrible that anyone had to cancel anything because there was this extraordinary thing going on. Of course, that's sad. But as you go on, I think you'll see why I really doubt that this lady is feeling sad, and why this seems to be more like a virtue signal comment. Let's go on. I was grateful not to have to endure their pollution levels until I wheezed as I drove past a house seemingly wrapped in gauzy smoke from the fireworks lit up in the driveway. I heard Mother Earth whisper to me that my gratitude should come with a grain of salt, or saltpeter. Did you know that saltpeter used in food preservatives and fertilizers also helps launch fireworks into the sky? There's about a 42% increase in particulate pollutants in the air following July 4th fireworks display. The pollution slowly dissipates, but these microscopic pollutants are tiny enough to travel into your lungs where they can cause respiratory problems. Think what that means when your neighbors are lighting up the sky all weekend. Okay, gonna pause here because, first of all, the amount of time in which we have fireworks going off for Independence Day, that's a very small window of time. And yes, there's some stuff going on in the air, but it's a very short duration. And honestly, as a result of tradition. And people who are going to fret about any and everything going into the air at all times, these are also people who are wanting us to destroy all sorts of other traditions, other ways of life, and they're not offering practical solutions for what would make any of that less. And they're also not thinking about carbon, the thing that goes into the atmosphere that they detest so much, is literally what plants breathe. They're not thinking about that. They're not thinking about the consequences or what that would mean for plant life or for us if things got, to a certain point. And I agree with you, Ro. Ro is saying, this woman needs to worry about the bullshit she's smoking more than the fireworks. Oh, absolutely. Because, she's starting to build this case like, oh, yeah, it's a tradition. Oh, but think of how horrible it is for the air and how horrible this is for health. You don't want to be selfish, do you? You don't want to be the selfish person who doesn't care about other people's health. I mean, you can probably tell just from that, what side she fell on, during the COVID hysteria and, the mascubators and everything else. I mean, you can already tell what her train of thought is. Let's go on. She goes on about breathing and smoke of any kind can damage not only your lungs but also your heart and brain. I am a lot more worried about the brain damage as a result of her ideology, and it'll get more apparent as we go through. The Environmental Protection Agency, yes, the EPA that is more ideologically driven than scientifically driven, I might add. But they report that fireworks contain uniquely toxic particles, including a mix of metals, which produce the colors in the rocket's red glare. They also contain polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are chemicals found in gasoline known to cause cancer in high concentrations. Oh, but did you notice how we sidestepped the issue about whether or not the fireworks is actually a sufficient concentration to cause any of that, or even what enough of a concentration is? Because not everyone who's filling in their car at the gas pump is ending up with cancer. They're not. Even the people who are in the business of delivering that gas, they are not all stricken with cancer. So I mean, she's framing this in a way to where you're going to be predisposed, if you just take what she says at face value, to come to the same conclusion that she has, that we just need to abandon this tradition. So let's go on. And now we're getting down to the economical expenses. This is an objection. We spend more than $2 billion in fireworks a year. Yeah, we do. And that 2 billion means that there are people in the fireworks industry who are employed and are able to put food on the table, as well as the people who distribute them. So let's also consider that in our calculations. For that, we get a colorful display as well as air and water pollution, fire threats, and as many 10,000 fireworks-related injuries that often lead to emergency room visits. Yeah, no denying. There are people who are terribly irresponsible with fireworks, and they get Darwin Awards. They deserve it. I'm sorry. When you are reckless with something that is dangerous and you get hurt as a result of your own stupidity, you deserve to experience the consequences of your actions. Period. Point blank. End of story. That does not invalidate the practice. My goodness. Think about how many times you've stubbed your toe in your life. You're walking along, not paying attention. You found the corner and bang, there goes your poor toe. And, for a few seconds, it's the worst pain in the universe. Does that mean we stop walking around? Does that mean we put foam around all the corners of our lives as though we were infants? No. There are certain things in life that if you have situational awareness, you're okay. And it's the same with very dangerous things like fireworks or firearms for that matter. There's all sorts of dangerous things that we do for a variety of reasons that we could get injured in. We do them anyway because there's a sensible way to go about doing these things. And at a certain point, if you are refusing to do things in an intelligent fashion, you deserve what happens to you. So let's see. And then she goes on, it's not just municipal fireworks shows we need to consider. According to an environmental scientist at the University of California at Irvine, okay, according to an environmental scientist. Who is the scientist? What are they into? Are they a political activist or are they actual researcher? Who is this person? Can we look them up and find out what their work is about? No, we can't, because she's not telling us who they are. And I'm getting at the point with these people who take this stance on rhetoric. If you are not bringing me receipts that I can independently verify and that I can actually investigate, then it didn't happen. I am really getting to that level of skepticism. But she goes on to that they, according to this scientist, that amateur hour fireworks show in people's backyards and on streets also contribute to air pollution. So not only does she want to get rid of, the town display of fireworks, she also wants to make sure that individuals can't do it either. As if, an individual family in town doing that is going to create such a problem with air pollution that it's going to be insurmountable and cause catastrophic damage. I mean, please. When communities enforce policies restricting street level fireworks, they have substantially less pollution, studies show. Again, I mean, she's building this up as though it's some horrible bad thing with persistent bad results. As fireworks' environmental impacts become harder to ignore, some cities are looking for alternative ways to celebrate July 4th. And here we go. Here we go. I'm not trying to take away your tradition. I'm just trying to make it safe. Yet another thing that they're saying, we need to change what you're doing, or at least how you're doing it, so it's safe for your safety, for your health, for the planet, for your wallet. All of these lovely reasons about why you can't continue living in a society that you were raised in. Nasty woman, hateful woman. Cities are going to flash instead of flare. They're using technology to light up their night skies, right? Because putting on these light shows, that doesn't have any kind of carbon footprint impact, does it? Psh, these people. Drones can make the usual pyrotechnics seem pale in comparison as they form shapes like splashing whales and dancing robots. Laser light shows are becoming popular. Chattanooga ventured into this new approach with a laser show at Miller Park. Oh, so not only is it safer, but it's better. You're not going to miss anything. It's going to be better. And then she's astonished to acknowledge that not everyone is on board with rethinking how to celebrate our nation's independence. 57,000 paragraphs in, and she finally admits that the 4th of July has something to do with the nation achieving independence. I read an email from a group called Undercover Mother that started, if your child remarks how we should cease fireworks shows because they damage the environment, remember what we're fighting for. This is a fight against the all-encompassing disease of Marxism. Yes, it is. This changing your traditions, all of that, it's not for the reasons they give you at face value. And even if you took their reasons at face value, there's plenty of counter arguments to be made that saying, that you're making a mountain out of a molehill with the concerns that you're bringing up. You really are. And of course, it is all motivated by Marxism. Marxism wants to tear everything down, change it, and to where you're left with nothing of your own culture, of your own way of being, of your own customs, but to where you're just doing what the Marxist government wants you to do. This is just another manifestation. But of course, this author doesn't think so. It's like, wow, it's not Marxist to want clean air and drinking water, fewer forest fires, fewer disabling injuries and trips to the emergency department. And it's not just young people who are reconsidering fireworks. This mother and grandmother is also reconsidering. Yeah, so now we've turned this into, if you reject their traditions, that you are essentially a more moral person. I knew we'd get there. And to say nothing of the fact that this brand of environmentalism, it is not about actually caring for the planet or being less tidy or anything of that kind. It is absolutely the environmentalism, which is Marxist in origin, which is anti-human. It's not about preservation. It's about making us feel guilty for existing. And I see you've got comments on YouTube, beginning with Ro. We had a person in our neighborhood who killed themselves on Independence Day because of the fireworks. My husband, dog, and I all have PTSD problems with fireworks, but I'll be damned if I say that we need to get rid of fireworks for any reason. This woman is the type that sees governments as parents to adults, not enforcement of freedoms. Absolutely 100%. And I know that a lot of military, and former and current, have a lot of issues with anything that goes boom loud because of their own experiences. And but I would also like to note that, like Roe, most of those are not the people who are advocating for these massive cultural changes. And hello to Gandalf, who's stopping in for a short time. just learned this was on. I posted notices everywhere. I try to let people know what's going on and when it's gone. Glad to have you here with us, sir. All right. Stop. Okay. Now that I have technology under control. All righty. So she ends her article, if we can call it that, as join us in rethinking how to celebrate the 4th of July. Again, she's saying 4th of July, not Independence Day. There may be mixed reactions from the community at first, but laser and drones could be a great source of wonder for future Independence Day celebrations. Yeah, first, you're wrong for doing this. We're going to change it up, and you're a better person if you do. This is typical leftist ideology manifesting. And it's yet another example of you need to change everything about yourself. That there's nothing about your culture and your customs that's worth preserving. And this is something it's not going to go away. I mean, these people are absolutely not just going to stop talking about this stuff just because we roll our eyes and think that they're idiots. They gain traction because they're much more politically involved than the average conservative is, or even the average libertarian, or just the average, normal American who isn't particularly, engaged in politics, but kind of likes our culture the way it is, who wants the good things that we have and our traditions that we have to go on. So we do need to start taking these morons more seriously because, they rumble quietly in their little corners online, and then they go whisper in the ears of politicians who end up doing what they're doing. This is what happens when you only have one kind of voice dominating a conversation. And we have an opportunity to really stand up for ourselves and our culture and say the solution for any of the concerns she brought up is not going to be found in rewriting our civilization. So there's that. Okay. And now that brings me to the last thing I really want to talk about today. And that's about we should really start brainstorming what we want American pagan temples to look like and be, and how we want them to function now. I realize for most of us, we don't have, a spare few acres around to where we could build a facility of any kind. I realize the vast majority of us do not have the money to do so. And I realize there's a lot of practical considerations before anything of this kind could be brought to fruition. The reason why I say we should start brainstorming about this now, it's because, first of all, there's a hunger amongst pagans of we would like to have our own spot. It would be nice to be able to have, a place where we can conduct our rituals and where we can meet for celebrations as a community. Again, coming together on the things that we have genuinely in common, while still, preserving our own individual spiritualities and our own personal convictions and thoughts, but coming together for these big, important occasions that we actually share. So there's a hunger for that. And also, once you start thinking about it, well, you start thinking about, well, how could we make this happen? So it gets this process started of, what actually needs to occur in order to bring it into fruition. So if we do this groundwork now, even if we don't really start seeing the building process necessarily in the next 10 years, it might be something that is very possible in the next 20. And certainly for the next generation of pagans coming up, this might be the seeds we plant and then that they bring into fruition. And then by the time the generation after them of pagans come around, having, your pagan temples in the modern day on American soil might be kind of normal for them, something that they've always known about. So there are reasons to start doing the work now, especially when it comes to construction. If you just take a group the size of Blackbird's Brood, we're not a terribly big group, but we have some good solid members. And each and every one of us, we are working with different deities. We have slightly different viewpoints on a variety of theological issues, but none of those things would really prevent us from coming together to celebrate, say, the next thing on the calendar is Lunasa, Freyfaxi, or as I'm going to start calling it, First Shadow. We all share, that it's important to start celebrating the beginning of the harvest season. That's important to all of us. And so what if we had a physical location? What if we were all in the same town? And, someone said, well, I've got 5 acres. Let's use those 5 acres for that. And they donate those 5 acres for our communal religion. And then everyone, kind of contributes with money and with skills. And eventually, we have our spot. And we have this building, we have other outdoor facilities so that whatever we're doing and whatever weather, we are able to come and do that together as a community. Let's say that was our situation. The question of, well, what should this look like? that's something that's going to come up pretty quickly, especially when we have different deities. I mean, if we were all just working with, say, the Greek gods or the Norse gods or the Celtic gods or the Egyptian gods, well, there's an established aesthetic. Historically, these regions of the world and the surviving temples and what we know of the surviving architecture, they had kind of a particular style. And there were different movements within the ages of the existence of these civilizations. The aesthetics, they did evolve and change as things went on. But, there was a look, there was a feeling. So how do we translate that as Americans? Because we're not just working with one set of gods. And I strongly suspect that a lot of the eclecticism that we see in American pagan circles, that's not something that's going to go away. It'll just be a question of how does it all get integrated together. So we can't just look to history and say, well, we'll just kind of copy and paste and, make a few adjustments for our environmental concerns for where we're at. For instance, I mean, if you are building a pagan temple in Florida, you're going to have uh, different environmental concerns than someone who might be doing this in the mountains or up north or in the middle of Tornado Alley. The building is going to have different construction requirements, and also it's going to, as far as the environment, if you are in a place where you have general good weather most of the time, places in Southern California, places in Florida, some parts in Texas, to where generally it's going to be warm more often than not, then in those places you would probably want buildings to where you're able to open it up more, to where people can be coming in and out, have a stronger connection between the outside and the inside, just because that's the environment you're in. Whereas if you're up north or you're in the mountains and things tend to be a bit chillier, you're going to be thinking about, okay, we need insulation. We need to be more judicious about where we have windows, how many we have, how big they are, and whether or not they are actually efficient in keeping out both the heat and the cold. We're going to have different concerns. And then on top of all of that, because those concerns, they have to be addressed through architectural design. We also have the whole, well, how can we communicate that this is a pagan place of worship? I know if we just threw up a whatever building, we can find, cheap ways of doing that. And those cheap ways of doing that are pretty generic, pretty anonymous. You see these structures and they could be absolutely anywhere. It doesn't communicate the purpose of the building. It doesn't give you a sense of the sacred. These are things to take into consideration. Let's see. And I see I've got a comment on Rumble. Oh, I'm so glad I have this tablet. From the American Folklore Paranormal Podcast, he says, that has been on my heart a lot lately. I've been scheming to make it happen. Oh, well done, sir. Good on you. He said, it would be awesome to make something that can be both outdoor and indoor, depending on locations, weather, etc. Oh, I absolutely agree. Because depending on what the celebration is, we're going to be wanting to do different things at different times. I mean, when it's Yule, by and large, we're probably going to want to be inside unless we've been extremely lucky with the weather. We're probably going to want to make things a little bit more cozy. But for our summer celebrations, if we're outside, if we're able to get some airflow, I mean, the more of that, the better, 100%. These are things to take into consideration. Another thing I've thought about is the use of local material. Is there a particular kind of timber that's common in your area? Is there a particular kind of stone? Is that stone suitable for actually building the structure with, or is it something you could use decoratively? And then, of course, we're talking about pagan temples, so it's been very common for us to have visual representations. Do we go with something? Do we tailor essentially our god statues or our spirit statues of different animal spirits and whatnot? Do we tailor that to the pantheon, to particular pantheons, what was common for them? Or do we go with something that's more realistic in the style of the Greeks? Or do we do something that's, kind of an amalgamation of all, to where you are getting kind of this mythical naturalism? What do we want to do? This isn't something that any one person can decree unless they were footing the bill for the whole building. In which case, if you foot the bill for building the pagan temple, I think you kind of get the veto power and the final say over the aesthetics of the place. But otherwise, if it is something that's more of a communal effort, these are conversations that need to be had. And these are things that should absolutely be settled by the people who are actually going to be using the location. So let's think about this. What do we want it to look like? Do we want to highlight perhaps in the landscaping as well? Do we want to maybe find forested areas to where we can carve out walking trails and have also external sites to where we might be able to do certain rituals and offerings and things of that nature? What do we want to do? Are we going to make an emphasis on incorporating our own native species of plants and animals? How are we? There are certain animals that they're wild, but it's not going to be dangerous to humans just to kind of have them around. Are we going to encourage them? Are we creating environments that are welcoming to them? There's a lot of different considerations, because I don't think it's a matter of choosing of, well, we're Hellenistic around here, so we're just gonna build a new version of the Parthenon and we're going to do everything in the Greek style, and we're only going to use plants in the landscaping that would have been native to Greece. Okay, I mean, you can do that if you want to, but that doesn't take in consideration the land you're actually on, the fact that you are in America and you are an American pagan. It does not take into consideration about whether or not the plants you would want to have there in the landscaping actually grow in the environment you're in. It's there are things to take into consideration. I mean, we can't just go onto Pinterest or things of that nature and say, oh, I think this is great, here's a visual representation, we'll just essentially do that. That's not going to cut it. I think it's going to be more so of a blending of influences about what kind of building is suitable for the environment you're actually in. What variety of gods are you really going to be focusing upon in that particular pagan temple? Are you wanting it to make it more broadly welcoming, so that no matter who comes and joins your group, that they're not going to feel out of place? To what extent are you taking our own American culture into consideration? Because there are certain building styles that have gained popularity through the years. I mean, one example that's pretty broadly popular is a craftsman. You'll see craftsman styles homes in little houses in towns. You will also see the craftsman style manifested in some of your more mountainous and lodgy type of structures. So are we drawing upon our own cultural influences? Because there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot to be said for doing so. How are we going to blend these things together? This is going to be a very communal process, a very creative process, and we may discover things that are brand new inventions. The point is that if we start talking about it now, we make it easier to happen later, and that's my main idea on that. So that's pretty much what I've got for you today. I'm hoping to get back on here with something that's a little bit more focused on the project itself, that we can delve into a little bit more. Hopefully, the Tuesday, we'll see what happens. But right now that's my intention. So if you don't see a notice for a live on Tuesday, well, then that means that I didn't quite get my thoughts together. But I'm going to try, because this is where my heart lies with this project. I really want to push this conversation forward, attract more people. And that's also another reason why, going into 2024, why I'm wanting to do more live streams and fewer canned videos. It takes more time than you might think just to put together even a 5-minute video and say, okay, this is what I have to say, this is as tight as I can say it, and then people are released and they can go on with their day. It takes a lot of editing and thinking and brainstorming about how to best deliver those messages. So if I'm having only a minimal obligation to do those, that opens up my schedule for a lot more, not just live streams, but also to have guests on, because there's a lot of people I would like to have on as a guest, but they have work schedules, and trying to accommodate their work schedule also with my production schedule, that hasn't always been a particularly easy thing. And I want to remove that difficulty, at least from my end, from the equation as much as possible. So that's another reason why I want to do more of the lives, have more free flowing, more in the moment kind of conversations, so I can also accommodate people who I think have a lot to say and have something really worthy to contribute. And I want to make sure that that becomes more of the focus of the channel, and also makes this project not just about I have these ideas and I'm throwing them out on the ether and I want to see what you guys think. I also want to bring in what other people think as much as humanly possible, because this is our shared legacy. I think we have a lot to do. But that is what I've got for you guys today. If you haven't already, please smash that like button. Thank you, Ro and American Folklore and Paranormal Podcast, and Gandalf Freyson for popping into the live chat. It really means a lot to me when people did that. If you were watching today but you didn't speak up, let me know you were here in the comments section. And of course, don't be shy. You can talk to me. You can talk to every other people in the comments section. I am trying to build an atmosphere where we are a lot more conversant with each other. I don't really like the live chats, that you see on some of the many of the big streamers where people are just leaning at each other. That's not very productive. That's definitely not what I'm trying to do here, and it definitely is not what I'm trying to accomplish at Blackbird's Brew on Gilded. Which, if you have not joined our group, please do so. The description link is in the description box below. I'm not doing the whole you have to pay to play to be part of the Gilded group. I'm not doing that. We need places to exist where people don't have to make a financial commitment in order to be a participant. More than anything else, I just want people's conversations. I want them to bring their intelligence, their experiences, their wisdom, and their ideas. And let's talk about them. That's really what I'm wanting to do with all this. But that does do it for now. And I will see you guys later. Bye.